at Corumdale Farm. It is the end of July. This is the rainy weekend. We're finally getting rain after a month of absolutely nothing. There's nice cloud cover this evening, so I thought it was the perfect time to record my July raised garden tour. So let's go inside. Along the path here, my Cosmo path. So for all my other tours, I was talking about my vision of the Cosmo Alley, and it's kind of working, kind of not. I severely underestimated the wind, which is stupid. We live in Oklahoma, hello, and they just will not stand on their own. So it's kind of like floppy Cosmo Alley. We are doing our best to keep them upright, but I don't know how much longer that will last. So next year I will be staking them so that they're a little more upright and not as sad. But they're still pretty. Which way, which way, which way? We'll go this way this time. I have my trusty vacuum with me that I bring every night because this is how I've been dealing with squash bugs and beetles and other things I find that I don't want to smush and touch in any way. So I vacuum them up and I dump them into a soapy water bucket that lives out here to deal with them. So the vacuum is always with me. Here we have my spicy peppers. My sweet peppers are in a different section. My Ascent Thai chilies are doing amazing. I'm wanting them to ripen to red. And then I've been Googling kind of ways to use them. This chili is typically used for drying, and then you can harvest the red chili flakes inside or grind them up for a powder, but they're not really a fresh eating hot pepper. I'm not seeing. So I'm letting as many of them ripen to harvest a bunch and play around with maybe dehydrating it or getting the seeds and stuff and see what's happening. I just came through and did a big old harvest of jalapenos. I have 4 plants here, but I'm already starting to see more guys come through. I will start harvesting them and saving them so that I can make cowboy candy later in the season, which is an essential canning activity that I must do because we're almost out from last year. All right, if you remember from earlier videos, this is the area that I cleaned out and replanted. I had 2 pumpkins that the squash bugs honestly beat us to, and the vine borers were about to win the battle, so they had to go. They were causing too much frustration in the garden. So they came out. I cleaned up some other plants, some phlox and celosia that just were done and were stressed in the heat, and I replanted sunflowers, and most of them have already germinated because it is so warm. So you can see if you come in here a little closer, almost every single one of them has popped up, which is exciting. That's the good thing about the heat for sunflowers, is they're going to germinate really well. So they're going to grow through my glads and fill in this area. I am leaving most of my sunflowers. So originally I harvested some, I dried some to harvest, but I noticed a couple days ago when I came out here, 3 yellow finches were perched around the garden eating the seeds, and I just love seeing those birds. They were so cute. So I've decided, as much as possible, unless like something like this comes crashing down into the garden, I'm gonna leave the sunflower heads up for the birdies. Right now the bees are going crazy. And I've got these guys ready to bloom, which is exciting. And this guy, I don't love this guy, but this grasshopper jerk just perched there to devour and ruin my life. I see you, mean man. Celosia still looks good. And these guys here with the interesting leaves, these are Mexican sunflowers. So these guys are going to be orange and they're going to look like this. This guy fell over in the windstorm we had, so I need to stake him back up. But see that fun bright, bright, bright orange? It's a Mexican sunflower, so he needs some help. He didn't appreciate the storm we had. Around the corner here, I have more sunflowers. My dahlias, man, it has not been an awesome year for dahlias. I have had a huge learning curve on how to grow dahlias successfully here in Oklahoma. and I'm not even at the success point yet. How to fail at growing dahlias in Oklahoma. They're not dead, they're just unhappy, but I might see blooms. I'm not giving up hope for them. My morning glories are attacking and devouring everything in sight, strangling them and collapsing them. So lesson learned on morning glories, but they're so pretty. I absolutely love seeing them open in the morning. Here is my cucumber bed. A couple videos ago, I showed cleaning out the cucumber bed. They are starting to get bitter from the heat, funky shaped, and I had already canned, I counted 25 jars of various pickles and relish. My husband's panicking. We eat a lot of pickles, a lot of kids. So I reseeded more cucumbers. I'll get creative. I'll figure out other ways to use them. There's all different things. But they germinated even in this heat. They're happy. They're loving the rain. This cucumber, this is a Boston pickling cucumber. He is also being affected by the heat. I'm just not really harvesting from him. I just liked that he was up the trellis and it's nice green to enjoy. I'm just not really harvesting and utilizing any of his stuff. As you can see, there's like a massive, ridiculous cucumber. I cut all of these off, so they need to be cleaned out. There's a lot of nothingness occurring, which is fine. I enjoy him on the trellis and he's happy. Over here is probably one of my fullest beds. This is my Gomphrena. I'm really, really liking how it looks in the garden. So far, I've been frustrated with how long it takes to mature for harvesting for bouquets, but in the garden as a landscape fabric, as a landscape flower, I really enjoy the color. I love its craziness. It looks like a Dr. Seuss plant with the sunflowers and the morning glories. This area makes me really happy. In the summer, especially the heat of summer, tomatoes tend to go a little bit dormant because it's too hot for them to pollinate and it's too hot for them to ripen. And so it's a good idea often midsummer to plant more tomatoes for a fall harvest. That'll be like super freshy plants. So on either side of the trellis, which used to have beans, I planted 4 cherry tomatoes and they are growing happily, slowly but happily up the plant, and I'm hoping in September and October to get a really good tomato harvest off of them. As an explanation of the overly aggressiveness of morning glories, they have decided that the fence is no longer a sufficient amount of space, but they've taken it completely upon themselves to trellis up. So I guess I'll accept it because I wanted a covered trellis, so maybe I'm actually not mad. I kind of like it. Way to go, morning glories. Area where I removed the straw flowers, I'm so glad I did it. I love that it's more open and it's not just filled with like grasshopper infested floppy straw flowers, but sunflowers are starting to germinate. These guys don't look terrible. I enjoy a little bit of pop of color that they're giving, but I'm glad it's only a couple plants and not like 15. More dahlias in the back. I'm waiting for them to bloom, but they're doing okay. This area is looking pretty scraggly. It has calendula, which is super bug magnet, and it's kind of fizzling out. And it had a dill that is done, and I need to come through and totally cut it out. In the back is all hollyhocks. Hollyhocks are a biennial, which means they'll grow all their leafy growth 1 year. Then I'll cut them back in the fall, they'll overwinter, and then when they come with new growth next year, they'll send up the flower stalk. So next year, as long as I keep these guys happy, I'm gonna have a whole row of blooming hollyhocks. And then hollyhocks are aggressive reseeders. So if I let the stalks go to seed, they'll drop them and we'll start the cycle again. And so my hope is in a little more cottage garden style, I just have a continual reseeding crop of hollyhocks to enjoy along the fence line. These are all the dahlias that I overwintered. If you want to see a hilarious video about how not to overwinter your dahlias, you can find that on my channel. But these guys are really happy. They're doing really well. I've got some Mondo white ones that are going to be like this big, which I'm absolutely loving. These darling purple ones. And some mysteries that I'm waiting for. I went in earlier today to stake this dahlia, and apparently it didn't want to be staked because it's decided to just like die. I don't.
That's how you push the root.
You think so? But there's other roots in there. So it shouldn't just be entirely dependent on one.
Like
a main line. So I might have to come through and trim him up. This side is fine. So yeah, sorry. So I'm excited to see what these other ones are that are gonna bloom. This is my strawberry bed. My strawberries are pretty happy. I tried to go through largely and pinch out the flowers and the berries this year so they could build a strong root system, so next year I could get a bigger crop. The plan is next year to fill the rest of this with strawberries, and this will just be my permanent strawberry bed. And they can send their runners and all that sort of thing, but I have more cucumbers. So maybe I'll just start selling cucumbers to the neighborhood because I have a lot of cucumbers. Back row is my basil and spent sunflowers for the birdies and my hyacinth bean vine. It is too hot in the summer right now for it really to be sending out its beautiful purple flowers, but it still has beautiful purple stems. It's still growing and covering the trellis, which is what I wanted. It looks wild and fun. It's making me happy. I'm hoping maybe in the fall with some cooler evenings, I'll get the striking, beautiful blooms that it'll send off, but we'll see. Over here, this bed has lived a life, let me tell you. So this originally was all squash. That's when I did my original squash video. I lost the battle initially to my yellow summer squash and my zucchini, ripped them out, threw them over the fence. But then I decided I didn't want to give up. I wanted to test and see if I planted a later crop of zucchini, if I noticed any difference in the squash bug pressure or the vine borer pressure. So here I have 2 zucchinis that I'm really praying I can actually get zucchini on because I want zucchini. My kids like zucchini. I want to freeze it and save it. No zucchini yet. And they're squash bugs. But so far I'm staying on top of it. The plants are healthy, the plants are happy, but then around them are more cherry tomatoes. So probably when the rain is done this weekend, I'll come through with another netting because these guys are just starting to flop over without support. So I'll come in here for another netting round. But this was a second planting of tomatoes, just like the arch, and they're all various cherries, which freeze really well. Don't need that many cherries to eat fresh. I already visited the spicy pepper bed. This is the sweet pepper bed. The one that is producing the most right now is my jimmies. These look, some of these are even overripe. These look like they should be spicy peppers in their shape, you know, all like long and funky, but actually they taste like a sweet bell pepper and they're really great roasted. I diced them some up and flash freeze them for to put in sauces, or even if we did like a fajitas, that would be good to cut those up. My bell peppers are not very big. I had a blossom end rot issue, so I'm treating it with calcium. It's also super hot. They probably could do with a little bit of shade cloth, but I don't have it. So I think that's why my bell peppers are kind of weeny, but they've tasted good. I've been able to make like a bell pepper pico already. I went through and just did a big harvest, so I don't have any yet, any new ones yet. But yeah, lots to learn for me on the bell pepper front. I know I'm growing the correct varieties because it's all the ones that people mention on Google of what to grow. They're just not very big, so we're working on it. If you have tips, let me know. They're little snacking bell peppers. They're called orange sweeties, and I also have red sweeties. They taste like a bell pepper, but they only get about this big, so they're supposed to be for like snacking. I'm not gonna do that with a bell pepper. That's ridiculous. But diced up, they'd be good. They just are bell peppers. They're not hot. Oh yeah, you should do that. Unless I gave you like a habanero. That would be so mean if I gave you a... If that was a habanero, that would be so funny.
Pretty good.
Okay, back to me. Now we're entering kind of part of the garden. I know, they're good. Oh. We're starting to enter the part of the garden that is like full of shame, an example of what not to do when trellising and pruning and taking care of things. So this is my tomatillo plant. This is not what tomatillo plants are supposed to look like. A jerry-rigged twine bamboo staking system with it laying on the ground is not how you're supposed to do it, but I always forget when I plant these like little weeny plants in May and you're like, I don't need to worry about it. I'll deal with it later. They don't get that big, and then before you know it, it's 1,000 degrees out. You don't want to do your tending chores and you just ignore it and ask your husband to do something with it. This is what you end up with. The plant is healthy, the plant is fine. I've already harvested maybe 12 tomatillos, so that's good. But yeah, don't, like here's one, don't trellis your tomatillos that way. Tomatillos are ripe when they start busting out of their husk. So yeah, don't do that. I pulled out my onions. I already harvested my onions, which did okay considering it's my first year. And I planted the rest of the glads that I had. So this is just a giant bed of glads. In the corner here is an exact mirror of the other side. I have more hyacinth bean vine. I have basil and sunflowers. We had a leak in our irrigation system, and I think this basil really benefited from it because it's like double the size of the other side basil. They got a lot of thirsty, delicious water, but the bees absolutely love it. I've been harvesting it for cut bouquets. That's why I let it go to flower instead of using it as an herb. I want it to flower because that's what will last in a vase. I love it. It smells delicious. Here is more shame and embarrassment. Tomatoes. This is what tomatoes look like when you don't trellis them correctly, you don't stake them correctly, and you also just decide not to prune them at all. They turn into this. And can we talk about that? Like the rain deluge the last couple days has completely busted open some of these slicers that I was really excited about. And instead the rain has just like ruined them. Oh my gosh. What is this?
What the heck? What's happening there?
Well, it tried.
Jeez.
It tried. Yeah, so the rain is just like splitting them open. They cannot handle. I should go in here and save what I can. That's a bug. That's rain. So maybe I can.
Your hand into hornworm.
Ah! Stop it! Don't say that. Stop it. Shut your mouth. So I should go in there and save some of it. But yeah, this is what happens when. This is an example of like what tomatoes naturally want to do, and this is part of our stewarding of them, is don't let them be like this. They're not healthy this way. So I need to come in, yeah, civilized, sophisticated, producing, tidy, like reasonable citizens of the garden. And then millennials. Lazy, sprawling, semi-diseased, worthless tomatoes.
You are a millennial.
X-gen tomatoes.
Oh, now it's me.
Oh no, what comes after? Z.
iGen.
iGen. These are iGen tomatoes. It's just on its phone, being lazy, sprawled on the couch with like worthless fruit. Don't be like this. Oh, the cowsy wowsies. Hi, babies. Hi, babies. I'm sure they love my high-pitched voice. I have another corner of dahlias. These guys are doing pretty well. Again, I think when it cools down, the blooms will look better and they'll actually start producing a bit more, but they're doing okay. Border dahlias, sunflowers. My glads are all tipped over. They're not netted like the flower field ones. I'm cutting those for bouquets. These I'm just enjoying in the garden, so I'm honestly fine that they've tipped over. My husband obviously decided he was not fine and saved one of them.
I didn't do that.
I didn't do that.
Did a child do that?
I didn't do this.
That's a child.
No.
I didn't do this.
I wouldn't stick an entire bamboo stake for one glad.
I did not do that.
All right, well, thanks, children.
That's probably a rhyme.
Okay.
She's trying to help.
Okay. So I'm okay with this. Again, I'm fine with it. Ah, assassin bug. Give him space. Here in front of me is my pollinator butterfly mix that I did. It's clear that I am not lacking in pollinators. I can barely come in here during the day. The bees are like, get out, we have work to do. So I didn't need to attract them with this, but I really like it. I just like that it's full of the blanket flower. And the fun thing about this mix is it's blooming at different times and kind of cycling through. So I'm really enjoying that. There's asters and alyssum and blanket flowers and rudbeckia and bachelor buttons. Little Mexican hats, I think is what these are called. Olay. So I like this. This is gonna come back. These are perennials, so it'll come back next year if I leave them. They'll probably reseed, and so I'm probably just gonna leave them like this. They'll come back bigger and better. This is my unplanned, overly aggressive sunflower bed. I didn't think that I was gonna plant a 9-foot sunflower, but he's here, he's thriving, he is loving life. Eric says 10 feet. He's very uncomfortable. He's used to being the tallest being in most situations. I love him and he's staying. Not looking forward to removing him in October. But below are dahlias and sunflowers, and they're really happy because they get kind of like that dappled shade because of the like king sunflower. So they're super happy. Almost done with our perimeter tour. I planted, stop it, I like sunflowers. I planted birdhouse gourds here a couple weeks ago and he is happy. He is off to the races, top of the trellis. His other matching friend is working. He gets less sun, so it makes sense that he's a little bit shorter. I'm still waiting for this to set fruit. I'm largely just seeing the male flowers, but again, I wanted a covered trellis and we're working in that direction, so it makes me happy. We had tied up these sunflowers and they like broke the twine, so that's why they're super tilted. But again, I'm loving the birds. The honeybees showed up 3-4 days ago. I just had like those big fat bumbles working, but the honeybees have found me. They are everywhere. They are working hard. Kind of nervous about getting stung, but they're really happy. More sunflowers and zinnias. Here is not a shameful area. Here is what used to be my snapdragons. You can see them peeking through, but with proper netting, I have 6 different tomatoes growing through the netting and 2 tomatillos here that are not falling over and looking like a ridiculous mess, but are upright and thriving. I probably need to do 1 more netting layer and then just maybe top them if they get too crazy. But this bed is happy. This is what I was hoping for. Behind me, I have more sunflowers. I have zinnias. I have my dahlias again in the corner. Here, it gets kind of interesting. Don't tell my husband, even though he's recording this, so he's gonna see it. But there's more pumpkins back here. I know you're mad, but it's for science. These were planted the last of everything. So I wanna see if I can get, well, that's a zucchini. If I can get zucchini and maybe something on these guys to defeat the squash bugs. So this is the very last planting about a couple weeks ago to see. I have penstemon, black-eyed Susan vine climbing up the fence. I have liatris, glads, and yarrow in here. I'm really loving these black-eyed Susans. They don't love the heat, so they're a little bit mad. But I personally like kind of the rambling nature of this area. The yarrow and the liatris are perennials, and so my plan is in early October, I'm gonna dig them up and transplant them into the perennial garden. So this guy needs to be cut. But these guys can be planted in the perennial garden and they will survive the winter and they'll come back way stronger, way bigger with taller flower stems to enjoy kind of early summer time frame, which I'm really excited about. So I'm not going to trash these. I'm just going to relocate them. I have another squash family, and then sunflowers and dahlias in the back corner there. Rounding out the corner here, I have more glads. I have more sunflowers here. I know they look scraggly and they're clearly dead, but again, the birdies are loving it. You can see there's already starting to be some holes here, and look how easy these seeds pop out for the birdies, and they can just get in there. How do they do this with their little beaks? Delicious seed, yummy, yummy. So I'm gonna leave it for them. It makes me happy. Oh my gosh, yay! That'll be fun. Here I have corn. I planted corn on both sides. This side is thriving, the other side not so much, and I realized that there is a big disparity in the amount of sun both sides get, so that one's obviously struggling way more. This one is hip height. The one over there is like, what even are you? You're so small. So we'll see what they do. I planted this corn. It's a ambrosia sweet corn. I didn't plant it so much to harvest the corn, but I want the stalks and I want to dry them, and I want to bunch them to use them with decor with my pumpkins for the fall. So I'm growing these mainly for decor, because if you go to Hobby Lobby and you buy like bunched corn stalks and stuff, they're like stupid expensive. Grow your own. It doesn't matter if you never get corn, you can have the stalks to dry. It's much smarter. My two center 10-foot beds have my tomatoes. In hindsight, I think I would have done a better job of grouping my paste tomatoes together and growing them a little differently, because they're staying so much shorter than like my cherry tomato, for example, that's my height. So it's been a little tricky doing the Florida weave, and I've fallen a little bit behind because of the heat. But overall, I'm really liking this trellising method. It actually did a pretty good job withstanding the crazy winds that we have. I don't know if we have a video of that. It was crazy. I'm so thankful that they didn't just crack and fall over. But hornworms, they have arrived. I first saw one a couple weeks ago, and he was like a super chunky fatty. He was huge, scared the crud out of me when he was like right this close to my face. And so since then we got a black light, and at night we've been hunting for them with the black light because they glow like bright blue and you can remove them. But 4 days ago, no, yesterday we had waited 4 days to hunt, and my husband and daughter came out, and I think they got like 20. It was disgusting. It was like a total buffet of my tomatoes. And to make matters worse, we actually saw the sphinx moth, which is what the tomato hornworms become, and that's what's laying the eggs everywhere. So we need to hunt every other day with the black light to stay on top of it, so that I don't have no harvest in the fall, because these greedy little hornworms are everywhere. But I'm happy with the tomatoes. My husband's favorite tomato that we've grown so far is an Amana orange. It's this giant orange slicer tomato. It's been fantastic. The heat is making things ripen really slowly, and I'm not getting a ton of germination. Like, this plant is sending off a lot of blossoms, but over a certain temperature, the pollen becomes sterile and it can't actually form the new tomatoes, so it just browns. So things are looking really scraggly right now. But this is when I'm seeing a lot of people saying like, my tomatoes are done, I want to rip them out and plant something new. Don't do that. They're semi-dormant right now. Keep them watered and happy. And come September, when you have cooler temperatures, they're going to give you another flush crop of fall tomatoes. So don't give up. I know it takes maintenance now, but it would not be smart to just rip them out in frustration. I need to come through again and prune and tie up. Things have gotten scraggly again. My excuse is the heat. I just haven't wanted to be out here because it's just frankly been so miserable. But things I think could use a pruning, lighten the load, so I have a less likely case of having things crack when we do get a storm come through. But I do have some wonderful tomatoes all hiding in there. This is the, I don't know what this guy is because he's crossing over. I think this is Celebrity. But this guy in here that needs to ripen, this is one of the Amana oranges, so I need to protect him at all costs because he is delicious. Here, for example, to finish out, these all in the back are my paste tomatoes, and you can see how much shorter they are back there. than like these slicers. It's like double the size. So next year, a lesson learned is I think I'm gonna order my varieties a little bit better, and it'll make tending to them a lot easier. Yeah, but they're like little weenies. So, I mean, I need to harvest them, but prevent them from slicing. Sweet little paste tomatoes. So I hope you enjoyed the July tour. It's really amazing. This is the fun thing about YouTube, and I'm recording the progress of my garden, and I look back in May and it just was empty dirt boxes with a lot of hope and excitement, but it was so blank and plain. And now fast forward to the end of July and I can barely walk through some of the walkways in the garden. It's so full. So I'm really excited. I'm really thrilled with how things are doing, even though I have tons of bug pressure, constantly being attacked and jumping and being dramatic with like it's my own bug zoo here. Every single bug you can think of, I feel like I've seen.
What's the two different career fields? There's entomology versus
botany.
Botany.
Botany is plants. Entomologist. I should be an entomologist at this point. My husband had a cotton borer on his neck in the house this morning. Like, burn it all down at this point. There are so many bugs, but they're not eating everything. I don't totally know why. I'm thankful to the Lord that maybe he's closing their mouths, or they're just buffeting on a lot of our grass and other sorts of things. But I'm really thankful that so far I have not had complete crop failure or like a full decimation. And I'm really thankful for that, because I know there are other gardens that are really struggling and having a lot of challenges, and I'm thankful that that's not the case in the garden this year, but each year is different. So we'll see what I have to tackle next year. I hope you enjoyed this video. Come back in August when I think other things are going to be blooming, especially the dahlias, and I do expect the harvest to start really picking up again in August, when maybe we have a little bit cooler evening temperatures. I hope you enjoyed this video and come back for more. And I just like angrily moo at him. So you should name him. And look at the ladies, they're like, getting on up, he's coming!